Good morning. Hayom Yom, Tes Vuv, Menachem Av. So today, Tu B'Av is a Jewish holiday. And the Talmud says that Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur are the two greatest days and the two greatest holidays on the Jewish calendar. And there's many things that we celebrate on Tu B'Av. There's many reasons why it's a holiday. But the underlying theme behind all of them is that of achdus, and harmony and peace and togetherness. And because of that, today on Tu B'Av, we celebrate the force and energy of harmony in the world, aka feminine energy. And today on Tu B'Av, we celebrate feminine energy at its best, feminine energy in its most intense, potent, and developed form. And because of this, historically, so Jewish girls that were fully mature and fully developed and were ready to get married, so on Tu B'Av, they would put on white dresses, and they would go out into the fields and they would dance and present themselves, and all the eligible bachelors would be there, and a lot of shidduchim and engagements and marriages were made this way. And it really kicked off a season of shidduchim and marriages and engagements. And because of this, till today in Jewish custom and in Jewish tradition, this time from Tu B'Av till Tishrei is a very good time and a very auspicious time for shidduchim and engagements and marriages. But in any event, because of this holiday of Tu B'Av, since it's a holiday, since it's a happy day, therefore today in our prayers, we don't say Tachnun. Now, in general, the sun represents and the sun embodies masculine energy, steady masculine energy, while the moon represents and the moon embodies feminine energy, which is a lot more powerful, but it's a lot more turbulent. It waxes and wanes throughout the month. It has a lot of highs and a lot of lows. But since the moon represents feminine energy, therefore on the 15th of every month, on Tes Vuv of every month, when the moon is at its fullest, when the moon is full, therefore it is a time to celebrate the moon. It's a time to celebrate feminine energy, because that represents feminine energy at its best, feminine energy at its peak, feminine energy in its most intense, powerful, potent, and beautiful form. Now came along the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, and he asked, if the moon is full on the 15th of every month, and the 15th of every month is a time when we celebrate the moon and a time when we celebrate feminine energy, then what is unique about Tu B'Av? What is special about Tu B'Av? Why is Tu B'Av different? Why is Tu B'Av any different and any more special than any other month? Why is it that specifically Tu B'Av was designated as the day where we celebrate the moon and we really celebrate feminine energy? Why is it better or different than any other the 15th of the month? And the Rebbe Rashab wrote down an answer and an explanation, which the Rebbe quotes in today's Hayom Yom. And it's a little bit cryptic and deep, and I do not really understand it fully, and I definitely don't have the words to explain it, but I will try my best, my very best. But I highly encourage and I highly recommend that you look at the actual words and read the actual text and try to glean what meaning you can, and ask whatever wise people you have in your life what the meaning is, but I will try my best, again, to explain it. And just by way of introduction to what the Rebbe Rashab says, so while the moon's energy and while feminine energy is embodied first and foremost by actual women, obviously, in a broader sense, the moon's energy and feminine energy is embodied by the Jewish people, or by souls. While non-Jews, or while the physical reality, or while our bodies represent and channel the sun's energy. And this is why the secular calendar follows the sun, while the Jewish calendar and the Jews follow the moon, because the moon reflects us. And the reason this is because the sun shines the same every single day. The sun is the same every single day. So the sun represents steady consistency. The sun represents routine and consistency and maintaining status quo. While the moon represents something more potent, something more powerful, something more revolutionary and deeper, and something more turbulent, and something more creative. And if you just maintain the status quo, then everything will always be good, everything will always be smooth, everything will always be safe, but you'll never innovate, you'll never get anything deeper. As opposed to if you want to create and you want to innovate, so it requires a certain element of risk. You need to shake things up, you need to turn things over, you need to revolutionize a little bit, which in the moment might seem scary and risky and dangerous, But if you go through with it, in the end, you create something so much more beautiful. You bring something deeper and something innovative to the table. And this is the difference between creative energy versus maintenance energy and status quo energy. And basically it says that non-Jews or Goyim, or the physical reality, what their mission in life is and what they try to do is they try to maintain nature. They try to maintain the status quo of the world. They try to just keep the world going as it is, and just continuing as things are. As opposed to Jewish souls or Jews, we're here to make a revolution. We're here to, and at heart and in our spirits, we're revolutionaries. We're trying to always dig deeper and trying to change things up and reveal deeper truths in the world and about the universe and about life. We're always trying to dig deeper and shake things up and reveal deeper connections and in the world and in reality. And we're trying to innovate in the world and be creative in the world and trying to dig deeper again into reality. And just to give another example so you understand the concept, it says that tzaddikim, so they represent and they embody the sun's energy, they represent and embody masculine energy. While Bali Tshuva represent and embody the moon's energy, feminine energy, because tzaddikim are always perfect, always do the right thing, consistently, day in, day out, they're always safe, which is beautiful and amazing, but they don't necessarily have the deepest connection with Hashem. While Bali Tshuva and souls and women and feminine energy, so it's a lot more deep and powerful and mysterious and beautiful, but turbulent and chaotic at the same time. And yeah, so all those latter groups are represented by the moon, while all the former groups are represented by the sun. And okay, so now that's the introduction. So now on to the Rebbe Rashab's explanation. So the Rebbe Rashab said that it's interesting that on the 15th of every month, so again, on the 15th of every month, we celebrate the moon and we celebrate the feminine energy because that's when the moon is at its fullest, and therefore that represents feminine energy in its most powerful, beautiful, potent form and force. But he said the interesting thing is that the truth is the moon is always full. The moon is always in the sky, it's always complete, it's always full, it's always whole. The thing is that throughout the month, in the beginning of the month and at the end of the month, there's no light shining on the moon, and therefore the moon appears deficient. The moon appears broken. The moon appears imperfect. The moon appears small and loserish, if you will. And throughout most of the month, all we see is a small sliver of the moon, or a part of the moon, or none of the moon at all. But he said the moon is always there, the moon is always perfect, the moon is always beautiful, the moon is always complete, the moon is always wholesome and whole and amazing. We just don't always see that. And what happens on the 15th of the month is that the sun and the moon become fully aligned, and the sun fully illuminates the moon, and then we see what was always there. We see how beautiful the moon really is. And all the moon's glory and beauty and power comes forth and is revealed, and the splendor of the moon is revealed. And for that reason, it's a time to bask in and celebrate the moon and celebrate feminine energy. He said the thing is though, for the moon basically to be revealed, or for the moon to be built up, or for the moon's beauty to come out, or for the moon's power to come out, it needs the sun's light. Because without the sun's light, like the rest of the month, when the sun is not shining it up, when the sun is not supporting it, when the sun is not building it up, when the sun is not propping it up, so then, although the moon really is there and the moon is beautiful and whole, we don't see that, and the moon appears broken, appears deficient, and is broken. And to be whole, to be complete, it needs the sun's light, which happens temporarily and for a moment every month on the 15th of the month. But the problem with that is that immediately after that, and even while it's happening, the moon is reliant on the sun. The moon is dependent on the sun. The moon needs the sun. The moon looks to the sun and relies on the sun and needs the sun and is needy for the sun and for the sun's support and for the sun to nurture it and build it up and prop it up. And so while it's nice to see the moon on the 15th in its most in its fullest form, it's not the ultimate vision, because the ultimate vision is not that for the moon to actualize its potential and to actualize all its latent powers, it should constantly need to come onto the sun or need to rely on the sun. because as long as that's the case, then when the sun is there for it, good. But when the sun is not there for it, or can't be for it, for the part of the month that they can't be together, or the sun and the moon are not aligned, the moon will be deficient. And she said, therefore, that's beautiful and nice, the 15th of every month, and it's a time to celebrate the moon. It's a time to celebrate feminine energy, but that is not actually feminine energy at its best, because feminine energy will always be lacking in that version of events, because it will always rely and need and be needy for, and need to come on to, and be at the mercy of the sun. And the sun could always undermine the moon, so to speak, and abandon the moon. And the way things are set up is that the sun and the moon will not always constantly be aligned, and won't always be. The sun will do fine on its own, but it won't always be supporting and building up the moon. And he said, when the moon will truly be at its peak, the true height of the moon, when the moon will really be at full glory, will be when Moshiach comes. He says, when Moshiach comes, then feminine energy will no longer wax and wane. Feminine energy will always be 24/7, like the sun. It will always be at its strongest. It will always be illuminated by the moon, by the sun. The sun and the moon will constantly be aligned. And because of that, then the moon will no longer be afraid of and will no longer fear losing the light of the sun. It will be like glorious and beautiful constantly, because it will always have the sun's support and the sun's light. And the sun then will lose its hold on the moon. It will no longer control the moon, or the moon will no longer be at the mercy of the sun, because at that point the moon will have fully won over the sun and will always be aligned with the sun and always be supported and built up by the sun. And just to explain a little bit what that means, going back to the fact that the soul is the moon while the body and the physical is the sun. Now, during the time of exile, so the physical and the spiritual, the body and the soul are not always aligned. And sometimes the body and the soul are aligned, and the body brings out and expresses the soul and allows the soul to be its full self. But often they're not aligned, and the soul is trapped by and stifled by and controlled by the body. But when Moshiach comes, the sun and the moon will always be aligned. Spirituality and physicality will always be aligned. The body and the soul will always be aligned. The sun will always support and always build up and always allow the moon to fully express itself and fully do its thing. Which you get, right, yeah. Okay, right. And then it says that state of being of Mashiach, when the moon will be at its fullest, when feminine energy will constantly be powerful, will constantly be dominant. So we had a taste of that when King Solomon, when Shlomo Melech ruled. It says that King Solomon represented and embodied the moon's energy. King Solomon represented and embodied feminine energy. And because of that, when King Solomon was king, none of the nations of the world, the physical aspect of the world, the Goyim of the world, the sun of the world, was never trying to fight or undermine Shlomo Melech. They were constantly supporting Shlomo Melech and at peace with him and trying to build him up and support him, and none of them were ever fighting with him or trying to undermine him, which was a taste of the time of the Moshiach, when the physical reality, when the sun will never be unaligned with, will never undermine the moon and the Jewish people. And yeah, just not to digress too much, but it basically says that the difference between the way masculine energy goes about conquering things or taking things over or trying to win other people, versus the way feminine energy goes about conquering or taking over an area or taking over other people, is that masculine energy uses brute force. It tries to always overpower its enemies. It tries to outmaneuver and outsmart and trick, or just by brute force take over its enemies. And the problem with that is that even when you gain the upper hand, it's always going to be temporary. It's always never going to last, because the moment that your enemy figures out how to outmaneuver you, the moment your enemy figures out how to get the upper hand, he's going to take back the field. He's going to destroy you and take you down. As opposed to the feminine approach, takes a lot longer sometimes and takes a long time sometimes, but the feminine approach is a lot more subtle and a lot more diplomatic. It's actually to transform all your enemies into friends. And because of that, though it takes a long time, when you do it, it lasts forever, because once your enemies are your friends, there is no longer any threat. You've won over all the potential enemies. And it says in the same way that basically The Geisha approach, or the Goyim's mindset, or the approach of the sun, or the approach of masculinity, is to literally fight with force against other nations and to take them over with force, as opposed to the Jewish approach, which has taken a long, long time, has taken thousands of years, is to change things from within and to make a deep revolution, and to, it may take a long time, but we basically are transforming the physical and transforming the Goyim into our friends. And a taste of that was when Shlomo Melech was king, but that will ultimately come about when Moshiach comes. Then the physical reality and their bodies and the Goyim will be transformed into our allies, into our friends, and there will never be any friction, and they will constantly support us and constantly build us up. And just to conclude, it says that a small taste of this, a small taste of what feminine energy will look like and what the moon will look like when Moshiach comes, and similar to the taste that we had when Shlomo Melech was king, so a small taste we get every single year on Tu B'Av. Specifically on Tes Vuv, it's not like the 15th of every other month. It's because, again, the 15th of every month is lacking in the sense that the moon, even though it's at its fullest, is still reliant and dependent on and at the mercy of the sun. As opposed to on Tu B'Av, we get a taste, a little taste, a small taste for a moment of what it will be like when Moshiach comes, when the moon will be at its most powerful, will be at its real peak, that it won't be at the mercy of the sun's light anymore. It will constantly, it will rely on its own light, in the sense that it won't be afraid of losing the light it has. It will know that it has this light forever, and it will always be at its most powerful forever. And just the reason why Tu B'Av is different, the reason why Tu B'Av is special, is because the high of Tes Vuv, the high of the 15th of every month, comes after the low of the beginning of every month. And the high is always commensurate to the low. And as low as the low is, that's how high the high is going to be. And the low of every month is pretty low, and that's why the high of the 15th is a really special event, a really special day, a time to celebrate the moon, a time to celebrate feminine energy. It's a real high. But since the low is never an absolute low, therefore the high is never an absolute high. As opposed to on Tu B'Av, so the beginning of Av is the worst month in the whole Jewish calendar, and it's the ultimate low, it's the lowest low. And Tisha B'Av is the lowest point possible, the lowest low. It's the total break in the relationship between the Jewish people and Hashem. It says, in fact, that it is the divorce between the Jewish people and Hashem. And a divorce means that things are not just going not good, it means things are not just bad, but it's a total breakdown. It's a total severance of the relationship. It's at zero. And therefore the opposite extreme of that is a total absolute connection that can never be severed, can never be broken. So other months, the low is like you've reached 3%, then you jump up to 97%. As opposed to on Av, the low is 0%, which means the opposite high is 100%. A total marriage and total connection which can never be broken between Hashem and the Jewish people. And it says, therefore, Tu B'Av is a taste of the consummation of the marriage, of the ultimate union and the ultimate marriage which will take place between Hashem and the Jewish people, between the sun and the moon, when Moshiach comes. And it says, because of this, actually, this is why Jewish people got married on Tu B'Av, in reflection of the marriage between Hashem and the Jewish people. And actually, just side note, but it says the Jewish girls would say then to the boys, while they were dancing, they would say, lift up your eyes and look at us. But Hasidus interprets that to mean that they said, lift up your eyes and see what's happening in heaven, see what's really happening here behind the scenes, see that today is a time in heaven when Hashem and Hashem marries the Jewish people, when the marriage between Hashem and the Jewish people is revealed, and in mirror of that, physically get married to us. But us getting married here is just a reflection of what's happening on high. And yes, that's why Tu B'Av is a small taste of the powerful moon energy and powerful feminine energy that will exist in the times of Moshiach. And just to conclude, the last source he quotes is that it says in the Talmud that one of the reasons why we celebrate Tu B'Av is because they used to cut all the wood they would need in the Beis Hamikdash for the altar. And when they cut the wood, they would cut it all throughout the summer. And on Tu B'Av, they finished cutting it. And they said the reason why they finished cutting it then is because it says the heat of the sun, the heat of the summer peaks on Tu B'Av, and then it starts becoming cooler. The weather starts becoming cooler. and the weather wasn't hot enough anymore that the wood would dry sufficiently, so they had to stop cutting the wood then. They had to make sure it was done before then. But it says the sun started to fall after that. The sun became less hot, and the power of the sun basically began to wane. And he says just what that means in a spiritual sense, in the context here, is that the sun's dominance and the sun's control over the moon and the moon's neediness on the sun begins to end on Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is the time when the moon becomes dominant, when the feminine energy becomes dominant, and Moshiach energy is on the rise. Yeah, so like I said, sorry I did not really have the words for that. Hope that made a little bit of sense. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and